as we continue to look for ways to heal societal divisions and become a more perfect union on this day, I want to have a conversation about the capacity to withstand adversity, difficulties, and develop a sense of mental and emotional toughness. My friends, I want to converse about the concept of resilience. A new global poll on the subject, commissioned by the Lloyd Register Foundation World Risk Poll, revealed the United States ranked second behind Sweden when it came to recording individual resilience around the world. In the third edition of the poll, which used data from more than 147,000 people from 140 different countries, about how they perceived and experienced risks as we ended the tail end of last year. If you're interested in sticking around to optimize your level of resilience in the face of adversity, then you should take in my conversation with my friend Dr. Stephen Sideroff. He's an internationally recognized psychologist, executive, medical consultant. He's an expert in the fields of resilience, longevity, and optimization, optimal performance, addiction, neurofeedback, and mental health. He's published pioneering research surrounding these topics, and he's an associate professor in the departments of psychiatry and rheumatology at UCLA. He has helped to establish innovative training and treatment approaches in optimal functioning mind-body medicine in the US, China, and Europe. And finally, he hosts summits on the topics of longevity, resilience, and leadership. And he joined me this week to have a conversation about how we can all optimize our level of resilience to show up as the best version of ourselves. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Doctor, if you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program. I'll wish you a happy Friday, and I'm super excited to engage in conversation with you about resilience, Doctor. Great to see you, and happy Friday to you.
Yes, well, good to see you as well, and I'm happy to be here to talk about my favorite subject.
Yeah, absolutely, Doctor, and I know it all centers around resilience, Doctor, and maximizing the ability to help people really get the most out of life, Doctor. So tell me, what do you think it means to maximize resilience and productivity? What does that mean to you?
Well, moment by moment in our lives, there's a range of how we can perform and how we can be. And you always want to be at the top of that range. And you have choices. When we're under stress, many things take place in our brains and bodies that actually have the potential to detract from our optimal. So, for example, if we're trying to perform at our best and we're too stressed, we lose some of our capability. If we're trying to think, what happens is our blood moves from our prefrontal cortex where we do our best thinking, and it shifts to our more primitive centers for survival learning. Our stress response is also our survival response. And when the blood moves from our prefrontal cortex to our primitive centers, we have less flexibility in our thinking, less ability to see the full range of capabilities. And so when we're more resilient, we're able to maintain this optimal functioning, keeping our prefrontal cortex active and not over tensing our bodies, which also impairs performance, but it also causes more inflammation in our bodies and impairs our health as well. So resilience is a way of being at your best as many moments of the day as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Telly, I'm fascinated to ask you, how do you think resilience and adapting to change are interconnected? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We all fall into habitual patterns. And in fact, it's interesting when we learn new ways of doing things, but when we keep repeating them, they become our habit patterns. And we have many habit patterns from our childhood that we didn't choose. They just were the earliest learnings that we engaged in. But when we are wanting to function at our best, it's important to take ourselves out of those habit patterns, to notice, oh, I'm doing it just the way I did yesterday. It may not be the best way, but I'm doing it because that's what I'm used to. That's what I'm familiar with. And we all fall into these familiar habits. And so moment by moment, we're being challenged by new situations in our day, in our lives. And we want to be able to learn from these new situations because the old patterns may not be the best. So, for example, if we make a mistake and we start beating ourselves up for a mistake, a lot of us do this. That may be an old habit, but when we beat ourselves up because we made a mistake, we make ourselves less capable of handling it the next time because we impact our self-confidence. We lose some of our self-confidence. So it's very important when we make a mistake to, as quickly as possible, let go of that mistake. We need to allow ourselves to feel the feelings around the mistake, but then learn the lesson of a mistake and then let it go. This is optimal learning. This is optimal performance. This is resilience, is letting go of stuff that doesn't support us. So here's an example of how we want to adapt to what's new in our world and not keep doing the same old pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, I'm also curious to ask you about how we minimize fear and trauma and really make sure that we maximize our potential and we don't allow fear and trauma to minimize our potential. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think, we all experience stresses and traumas in our lives, and they have an emotional impact on us, and we can get stuck in those emotional patterns. And it's so important to recognize. I start off, Kevin, with a growth mindset. The growth mindset says that whatever shortcoming we experience, and it could be the shortcomings due to trauma, that we are not stuck in those patterns, that we all have the opportunity to learn and grow and find healthier ways of dealing with whatever has happened in the past. So one of the keys to dealing with any emotional upsets of the past and traumas from the past is to notice how they're still impacting us. So one of the ways that they may still be impacting us is we carry a lot of emotional baggage. We're angry. we're sad, we feel a sense of loss. And sometimes if what happened to us was, really impactful, it makes it difficult to let go. But with a growth mindset, we start off with, does this serve me? If it doesn't serve me, I have to find a way to let go of it. And there's a process to go through to let go of emotional upsets of the past. First is to acknowledge that I have feelings about it, maybe sadness, maybe anger. The second is to give ourselves the opportunity to express those feelings. So instead of pushing those feelings down, allow them to come up and express. I'm angry. I'm sad. Allow yourself to cry, because when we don't, we literally need to hold in those feelings, which actually contributes to experiencing more trauma. So we need to allow ourselves to express and release those feelings, and then find a way to get into a place of acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what happened. Acceptance simply means that was my reality. I can't change the past. I need to accept so that I can let go and move on. And that's the whole pattern and process to help you let go of emotional upsets of the past.
Yeah, absolutely. And doctor, you've been a educator in one form or another for almost 4 decades, my friend. And I talk to organizations all about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion because, doctor, at the age of 9, I was told by a doctor that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because of my cerebral palsy. So it's been my personal mission to educate employers about the benefits of hiring folks with disabilities. But the question for you, my friend, is how do you think diversity and resilience are interconnected? What are your thoughts there?
Yes, so I think diversity is so important on so many different levels. And we know from a biological perspective that the greater the gene pool of a population, the greater the chances of that species surviving to the next and the next and the next generations, because you never know when one type of gene or another type of gene may be the thing that will help that species survive to the next level. And I think it's true with what we're talking about now, with there are people with all different kinds of disabilities, differences, different approaches. And the more diversity you have, the more opportunity you have to solve problems. Because if this person over here can't solve the problem, maybe this person over here can. If someone has some kind of disability, my experience is that everybody with a disability finds ways of compensating, find ways of utilizing what they are capable of doing in a different direction to overcome the disability. So everybody with a disability has, at the same time, some superpower as a result of that disability. People who are blind and use Braille, if you look at their brains, you find that they've supersized the area of their brain that has to do with touch and sensitivity. And that's because they have learned and have a particular superpower due to their disability. So the key with any disability is to find what the superpower is, because we all develop along different lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And, doctor, I'm also curious to ask you, what do you think it means to have or possess a resilient spirit? What does that mean to you?
A person with a resilient spirit is someone who's always looking for the best way. Someone who, with a resilient spirit, is always going in the direction of positivity, is always going in the direction of, let me find the way, rather than this is difficult, or I don't know if I can find the way, or maybe it's not possible. A resilient spirit is always going in the positive direction, finding the possibilities, finding what they can do to move themselves forward. That's at the heart of a resilient spirit.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned before, Doctor, you've been in the field for almost 45 years, and you've also conducted groundbreaking research, my friend, and you've led programs in various institutions worldwide. So I'm wondering if I can ask you, what is the most rewarding part of what you do, and why is it so much of a passion for you? I'm fascinated.
And so, resilience covers many areas. So in my book, which is just published a couple of weeks ago, The 9 Pillars of Resilience, The Proven Path to Master Stress, Slow Aging, and Increase Vitality, what I get excited about is how, no matter where you are, no matter what's going on, there's always a best way forward. Now, a couple of years ago, I published some groundbreaking research with breast cancer survivors. So these were women who, because of the cancer and their chemotherapy, had what's referred to as chemo brain. Have you heard of that term before?
I have, yeah.
So chemo brain is a symptom that all of these women experienced, in which they had cognitive fog. They couldn't think clearly. One of the women told me, I don't read a novel anymore because I can't maintain the thread of the story. Another woman had to quit her high-powered job because she wasn't able to focus or concentrate. And we did an intervention, a treatment referred to as neurofeedback. Neurofeedback is a way of literally monitoring your brainwave patterns and feeding that information back to you, so you can literally learn to shift your brainwave patterns into a more normal pattern. And what we found with these women when we started is that they all had tremendously abnormal electroencephalograms throughout the brain. And one of the impairments is that their very low frequencies were very elevated. So these are the frequencies which you usually see when you are in deep sleep. Delta frequencies, the slowest frequencies, and they were having too much of it across their entire brains, which explained their cognitive fog. We did an 18-session treatment, and these women said they got their lives back. And when we did another assessment of their brain at the end, we found that we almost completely normalized their brain patterns. And so this was a beautiful demonstration of the power of our brain's resilience, of our brain's ability to heal from tremendous trauma. And so that was a tremendously rewarding research study that I did, which has now stimulated other people to follow through and do other studies using neurofeedback.
Yeah, fascinating. And, as we evolve through life, Doctor, what do you think we've learned most about the power of resilience? What are people telling you about what they've learned about the power of resilience and how it can play a positive role in their lives? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I think what's so important from people is simply, the key is to engage in a process of challenging yourself and discovering that you can succeed. a lot of times we procrastinate, we avoid, because we have this inner voice telling us we won't do it right, we won't do it well enough, people are going to judge you, people may reject you, and we have all of these internal negative messages learned in our childhood that actually stop us in our tracks. And it sort of is a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if we don't engage in the process of taking a challenge, we never succeed, and we never learn that we can succeed. And so the biggest message around resilience and what people discover when they follow through and they take the challenge, so that they raise their courage a little bit higher than their fear. That's the key. Mobilizing courage enough to overcome your fear and take action, because invariably when you take action, you have success. And even when you make a mistake, there's still something to learn from taking action that makes you better the next time you take action. So the key is raising courage above fear, so you take the action, and then if you make a mistake, being accepting and loving toward yourself and say, okay, what can we learn from this so we can try again and get it better the next time? That, in a nutshell, is the healthy, resilient approach, and it's what people learn. Every time they take the challenge, these are the lessons they learn, which make it easier for them to take the next challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, we've reached the point in our conversation where I'm going to ask you formally about your book, my friend. You referenced it before, but as you said, it's the 9 pillars about that dive into resilience, my friend, focusing on mastering stress and slowing the aging process and increasing vitality, my friend. So tell me about the book, why you wrote it specifically, and what you hope people take out of it, my friend.
Yeah, so very early on in my clinical work, I found that stress was the key modulator of whether people have a healthy and happy life or not. That stress was the thing that impacted their health and impacted their performance. And so I wanted to find ways to help people best deal with the stresses in their lives so that they can become more resilient, so that they can be more effective in their lives. And through that research, I found some very interesting things. First, I found that we all have a lot of resistance to dealing with our stress. And that was the first interesting fact, that even though I know that stress can hurt us, most people have resistance to dealing with stress. And that's because stress is not just bad. That if you think about all the successes in your life, I guarantee that almost all, if not all, of your successes have been accompanied by stress. If you have an important performance, it could be stressful. If you are taking an important test, it could be stressful. If you are having an important meeting that leads to success, it can be stressful. And so our brains have paired success with stress. And so to some degree, we look for it in our lives because it can be a tool. But the key is that there's a stress sweet spot. You can increase stress and improve performance, but then there's a point at which if you keep increasing stress, performance and health fall down. And so the key is getting into that stress sweet spot. But if you think about your day, you think about your life, there are many stimuli throughout our day that trigger the stress response. Uncertainty, danger, the fears of failure. All of these throughout our day. Am I going to pay my bills? They activate the stress response. But Kevin, how many stimuli do you have in your day that tell you you're safe, that tell you you can relax, that tell you you can let down your guard?
Not very many. Yeah.
No, not many at all. So that's our responsibility. And this is one of the things that I've learned is that it's not about stress is bad. It's our responsibility to keep stress within that sweet spot, and that we need to engage in ways of recovering our nervous system and keeping it in a place of balance for our best performance and our best health. And that's at the heart of my book, is helping people find that sweet spot, helping people know when they're in that range of optimal functioning and optimal health. And the 9 pillars basically guide people into what I refer to as the path in which we keep ourselves in this place of balance, where our performance is at its best and our health is at its best.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, what do you think it means to maximize productivity and prosperity in life? What do you think that means?
I think I have the story of these 2 lumberjacks, and Mr. Lumber gets up first thing in the morning. He takes his axe and he starts chopping wood, and he's very committed and chops wood throughout the day nonstop. At the end of the day, at sunset, he sees this big pile of chopped wood. The other lumberjack, Mr. Jack, he too is very industrious and wants to produce as much as possible. And he takes his axe and he's chopping and chopping and chopping throughout the day. But every hour, he takes a 10-minute break. And at the end of his day, he looks over and his pile of wood is twice as big as Mr. Lumber. Why is that? And that's because during those 10-minute breaks that he takes every hour, he sharpens his axe. And it's up to all of us, if we want to be prosperous and productive, to always make sure we're sharpening our axe. This is our axe. Our mind body is our tool, is our instrument. And we want to make sure that our mind body tool is functioning at its best. And to do that, we have to take some time to practice a relaxation exercise that activates the recovery branch of our nervous system. We want to take some time to be good and loving to ourselves, because that results in the best performance and our best health. So when I think of prosperity and I think of productivity, I think of this notion of balance and resilience, in which we wind up producing and having prosperity for the longest range of our lives into old age, rather than getting sick and old and in pain too early in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Doctor, I want to explore the idea of people's resistance to growth. A lot of people are afraid to get out of their comfort zone, but I think it's one of the best ways that you can grow. So I'm curious, what do you think the keys are to accepting change and rebuilding our ability to adapt? What are your thoughts there?
Again, it goes back to the lessons of childhood. So when we're born, we have this amazing capability for adapting. Humans are phenomenal at our ability to adapt. We learn from experience. We try things and we see how they work, and we make adjustments based on the feedback that we get from our environment. But what happens is we learn these lessons very well in our childhood, but we don't adapt to the whole world in our childhood. We adapt to our primary caregivers, the people who we are dependent on. But then our ability to adapt freezes to those lessons, and we grow up, we become adults, and we live by those same rules. And as you just said before, we stay within our comfort zone. So our comfort zone is delineated by the lessons of our childhood. For example, you shouldn't cry, or you shouldn't get angry. Or, how many people are afraid to get up and dance because they are afraid of looking silly? So we stay in those comfort zones and we don't challenge ourselves. This is why I've referred to developing a healthy internal voice. We have an internal voice that can be too critical, too judgmental, too hard on ourselves, and too negative. But I like to identify the qualities that go into a healthy voice that we hear 24/7. And the qualities of a healthy voice are coming from a place of love, acceptance, compassion, support, care, and joy. So now those are the key elements to an internal voice that best supports you. Now that voice might say to you, yeah, Kevin, take that challenge, do that thing that's different and new for you, because that's the way of growing. That's the way you will discover your full capabilities. That's the way you'll achieve greatest success. So we need to say no to a lot of the negativity we hear from our internal voice, because it doesn't support growth. It supports constriction. And we want to start coming from this voice that I just identified that has those positive qualities, because that voice is the voice that will support you, will say, hey, it's okay to try even if you make a mistake, because even when you make a mistake, you'll learn a lesson, you'll grow, and you'll be better able to do it the next time. And so we need to develop this sort of growth mindset as part of our way of engaging with the world, so that we experience any limitation as an opportunity to grow, any shortcoming as an opportunity to grow and develop and handle situations better than we did before. And to do that, we have to move out beyond those limited boundaries that were set for us in our childhood. Even though we may have a loyalty to our parents, that loyalty should not extend to staying limited in our own abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doctor, building on that point, one of the great things that I think about life is the ability to be vulnerable, because I think there's grace in vulnerability and it helps us grow. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. I think, so many of our physical illnesses are due to how we don't recognize that we can become more resilient. 70 to 90% of office visits are due to the effects of stress, one way or another. Physical symptoms are due to turning on the stress response too often, too frequently, too intensely, and not giving ourselves the opportunity to recover. And a lot of times that's due to, again, these old messages. So I really encourage people to think in terms of visualizing where you would like to be 5 years from now, and then setting yourself on the path to get there, and switching into this healthy voice, which I outline the steps to help you achieve in order to take little steps one at a time in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And, doctor, as you know, I'm coming to you today from Canada, my friend, and I know that you have a history north of the border. So tell me, what do you love most about Canada, my friend?
So I have a very close friend who owns an island on a lake in the Laurentian Mountains north of Montreal. And I go there once a year for a couple of weeks. And I do that to totally disconnect. I do it to connect to nature. And this is something else that I've really encouraged everybody to do. When we're on the internet, when we're on our computers, when we're in traffic, when we're in cities, we begin to resonate with the energy of electronics, the energy of stress, the energy of tension. When you connect with nature, nature tends to help us get into this better place of balance that I refer to as resilience. And so I always look for times where I can completely disconnect. And it could be just an afternoon going up into the hills and sitting on a rock and just breathing and noticing nature, because that helps our bodies heal. Connecting to nature literally helps our bodies heal. They ground us into a natural rhythm. And when you ground yourself into a natural rhythm, your body's own healing mechanisms are engaged and unconsciously serve to help your body heal. I refer to this as intentional healing, doing certain things that help your body heal. And one of them is sitting in nature, being in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And, doctor, my final question for you today has to do with your own individual, personal, and professional legacy, my friend, and how you want that to be defined.
Well, it's a great question. And I really feel blessed that I'm able to work with people and teach them better ways of living that result in their better health and their peak performance at the same time. This is a lot of people think that to perform at my best, I have to sacrifice my health. And my whole message is that that's not the case. That in fact, the same lessons that enhance your health enhance your performance. And so my legacy is to be able to share this with as many people as possible. This is why I wrote the book that I did. It's why I'm on your podcast. It's why I do a lot of these interviews, is because I want to share these messages with people so that they could live a better life. And that's the reason I wrote the book, is because it's like a handbook for optimal living, and it's step-by-step program that helps you get on what I refer to as the path. And the path is a way of living a more resilient and healthy life.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, doctor, tell me, if people want to buy the book or get in touch with you personally, what's the best way they can do that?
So I'm very happy to say that my book is available in all bookstores. If you go into a bookstore and it's not there, ask them to carry it, and they will. But it's in all Barnes and Nobles, all other bookstores. It's on Amazon. It's online. You could purchase it online anywhere. And what I want to offer your audience. So one of the things that I've done is I've created a resilience questionnaire. A person can take and they can self-score, and they can get their own personal resilience profile along my 9 pillars. And so if you go to my website, drstephensideroff.com, there's a lot of very useful information there. You can get a free audio download that takes you through a relaxation process. But if you want my assessment profile so you can get your own resilience scores, you can email me at sideroff@ucla.edu, and I will send you a free copy of that.
Well, fabulous, doctor. I have to tell you that anytime I get to have conversations with smart people, I'm better for it. And I want to thank you for your dedication to education, resilience, and maximizing our own productivity and prosperity in life, my friend. And I want to thank you for engaging in conversation this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Well, thank you, and it's been a pleasure. Great questions, and I admire you for doing this podcast and helping to get the word out. Thank you.